Imagine waking up one day with no sense of who you are, or where you came from.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 90s mysteries that were finally solved.
Now investigators are able to derive the first police sketches of the elusive killer.
For this list, we're looking at the most puzzling cases and previously unexplained phenomena from the 1990s that were eventually cracked. What unsolved 90s mystery do you hope will get worked out soon? Let us know in the comments below. Number 10. The Phoenix Lights. On March 13, 1997, thousands of people in Phoenix, Arizona and other surrounding areas witnessed a series of unexplained lights hovering in the sky.
And it's been 26 years, but it still fascinates, captivates, and confounds many of us. We're talking about the Phoenix Lights that appeared in the skies over the valley without warning.
The observers reported a massive V-shaped formation of lights, as well as a separate stationary set floating above the city before suddenly disappearing. Even air traffic control saw the lights, but couldn't register them on their radar. The strange event sparked intense speculation and became a subject of interest for UFO enthusiasts and skeptics alike.
Because thousands of people saw these massive craft or objects hover right over them.
However, the military soon explained that the lights were flares from their aircraft, which were conducting a training exercise that evening.
According to the military, there was a planned military activity that night called Operation Snowbird.
The planes were simply moving in formation. Multiple scientists who reviewed the pictures and videos of the event also backed up this account. Number 9. The Kevin and Bean Show Confession. The KROQ-FM morning show Kevin and Bean received a chilling call on June 13, 1990.
It was then that a man, who the DJs described as whacked out and disturbed, called into the station to confess to something much greater.
The unidentified caller claimed to have taken the life of his girlfriend after discovering her infidelity. This supposed confession stunned listeners and triggered a media frenzy, as well as a police investigation. It was even featured in an episode of Unsolved Mysteries.
You know, what the experts feel that this guy was legitimate. It's no one we know, and as far as we're concerned, that's his story.
Authorities initially found similarities between the revelation and the unsolved murder of Angela Cummings, which occurred just 2 months earlier. After a lengthy investigation, it was revealed that the call was a publicity stunt, staged by the hosts of the show and a DJ friend of theirs.
They would soon apologize on air, saying, "We apologize. We didn't think it was going to go this far."
They were fined about $12,000 and ordered to carry out 149 hours of community service. Number 8. The TWA Flight 800 tragedy. On July 17, 1996, Trans World Airlines Flight 800 took off from New York's JFK International Airport, headed for Paris. Shortly after its departure, the plane suddenly exploded, killing all 230 people on board.
There were no survivors. Public outcry was immediate, and suspecting a crime, the FBI launched an exhaustive investigation.
The tragedy quickly set off a flurry of theories, most notably that the aircraft had fallen victim to terrorists. Some witnesses even described seeing what looked like a missile moving towards the plane before the explosion, but this theory was disproved. The resulting investigation, which was one of the longest and most expensive in aviation history, reached a conclusion after 4 years.
Investigators examine the design schematics of the aircraft. An intriguing detail catches their attention.
The explosion was most likely caused by an electrical short circuit in the center fuel tank, which led to the ignition of the flammable fuel vapors.
This changed the way planes were built, specifically how fuel tanks were constructed.
A tragedy has resulted in a number of significant improvements, both in aviation as well as in victim assistance, family assistance.
Number 7. The disappearance of Dawn Sanchez. Dawn Sanchez disappeared on August 30th, 1991, after leaving a motel with her boyfriend Bernardo Bass in his distinct 1979 Pontiac Grand Prix.
Because of the transient lifestyle she lived, no one thought to report her missing until October.
Bass became the prime suspect in the case, but with no body, weapon, or even his car found afterwards, the charges were dropped. The case was reopened years later after a tip came in that Bass's car was possibly buried in an abandoned lot.
An informant claimed that the Pontiac Grand Prix had been disassembled and then buried in an abandoned salvage yard lot in Alviso, California.
As an excavation of the entire lot would have been too expensive, authorities received unlikely help from NASA. Using a rover designed to carry out underground magnetic surveys, they were able to unearth car parts that matched the 1979 Pontiac.
Using SANCHEZ data, after 19 years of searching, they finally found and retrieved car parts to Bass's Grand Prix.
As a result, Bass pleaded no contest to manslaughter and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Number 6. The Forgotten Memories of Pierre April. What could be more unnerving than waking up in a ditch with no recollection of who you are? Well, if you were Pierre April in May 1992, that would have been your reality.
Then I realized I couldn't phone anybody. And that's when I realized that I didn't know anybody, including me.
With just $17, a duffel bag, and a library card issued in his name, April wandered to San Diego, where he was picked up and taken to a shelter. Although he slowly began to recollect pieces of his life, they all formed parts of a puzzle that remained incomplete.
But I saw downtown and said nothing. I looked at the building and they meant nothing.
That changed later that year, when April's case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries. One of his colleagues called the show's tip line after watching the episode, confirming his identity. April was reunited with his family and eventually recovered his memories.
I'm someone again. And for quite a few months, I was nobody and nothing.
Number 5. The Centennial Olympic Park Criminal. During the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta, Georgia, 3 pipe bombs were detonated in the Centennial Olympic Park, resulting in the deaths of 2 people.
They were about to start a new song and bam, just a really loud noise.
This number could have been significantly higher if not for the efforts of security guard Richard Jewell, who discovered the bomb early on.
Happened to be at the right place, at the right time, and did the job that I was trained to do.
Jewell was controversially named a suspect in the case, but was cleared by the FBI 3 months later. After similar bombings occurred in the following years, authorities were led to a man named Eric Rudolph. Rudolph evaded capture for years, but was finally apprehended in May of 2003. He pleaded guilty to multiple criminal charges and was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms.
Rudolph pled guilty in an Atlanta courthouse. Richard Jewell was there.
Number 4. The murder of Marlene Warren. In May of 1990, Marlene Warren was shot dead in front of her Wellington, Florida home by an individual wearing a clown costume.
Suddenly, the clown pulled out a gun and shot Marlene in the face before fleeing in this white convertible.
Although the murder was witnessed by her son, police had no major leads, and the case eventually grew cold. Years later, Warren's husband Michael got married to a woman named Sheila Keene, who had worked closely with him in the past and was initially a suspect in his first wife's murder.
But detectives kept at it. They even unearthed this Halloween photo of the suspect in clown face.
The two moved from Florida to Virginia and began a new life together. When authorities reopened the case in 2014, their investigation led them right to Keene. In 2017, she was arrested and charged with the crime.
Justice will end it all here, and that's all that really counts.
She eventually pleaded guilty in 2023, although she still maintains her innocence. Number 3. The BLOOP. With a large part of it still unexplored, the deep ocean holds many puzzling mysteries. This, however, is no longer one of them.
I'd be happy to give you the story. It's a good one.
In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration captured a strange, low-frequency underwater sound in the Pacific Ocean. This noise was so loud that it was detected by multiple sensors over 3,000 miles apart and possessed a characteristic bloop sound, hence the name.
We call it bloop because when you listen to it, it sounds like bloop.
Once this report made its way into the public, many let their imaginations run wild.
Researchers began speculating that the noise may have been a result of ice calving in Antarctica, but many still held on to the idea that it was made by some creature, including the NOAA's lead researcher, Dr. Fox.
Some horror fiction fans even attributed the bloop to Cthulhu, the mythical H.P. Lovecraft creation. That theory was quashed in 2012 when scientists revealed that it was the sound of an ice quake resulting from glacial movements. Number 2. The Unabomber. Between 1978 and 1995, an unidentified terrorist carried out a series of bombings in the U.S. that killed 3 people and injured 23 others.
We think we're looking for a white male with a high school education, might even appear to be a very nice guy with no apparent predisposition to violence.
The targets were tertiary institutions, aviation companies, and individuals in the technological field. The FBI dubbed this individual the University and Airline Bomber, resulting in the nickname Unabomber. For nearly 2 decades, the identity of the Unabomber remained a mystery.
As we know, in so many cases of serial killers, pride goeth before the fall.
That is, until his 35,000-word manifesto was published by the Washington Post in September 1995. A man named David Kaczynski discovered similarities between this manifesto and the writings of his brother Ted.
How long do you think he was challenged with mental illness?
It's pretty clear that by the time he was a graduate student at the University of Michigan, he was suffering from some pretty serious delusions.
After contacting the authorities, Ted Kaczynski was eventually arrested in April 1996 and sent to prison for life. He died there in June 2023. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. The Vampire Clan. In November of 1996, Jennifer Wendorf returned home from work to find her parents murdered inside their Florida home.
49-year-old Richard Wendorf and his wife Ruth killed in their own home.
The shocking crime initially astounded police, but their investigation led them to the Wendorf's other daughter Heather and her unusual group of friends. Heather had befriended Rod Farrell, who was the leader of a Kentucky cult called the Vampire Clan, made up of a few other young people.
A former member of the vampire group said back then,
"He despised his family, he despised his wife."
This group was attempting to help Heather escape from her parents' control when Farrell and another member, Scott Anderson, went into their home and killed them. The clan was later apprehended in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, after one of the members' grandmother led the police to them.
Farrell was eventually indicted for first-degree murder, but Heather Wendorf, while initially arrested and implicated, did not get hit with an indictment.
Farrell is currently serving a life sentence for the double murder.